I said at the start of this series of videos that Terraform is not exactly a programming language, but yet we are now talking about variables. Well, that's because variables are just into everything and anything. Everything and every tool you use, every software you use, there is some sort or some form of a concept of a variable there. And in Terraform, variables along with modules are the key to really making your Terraform configuration portable and reusable in any environment and anytime you want. In this video, I will cover the most important types of variables and then show you how you can define them and use them in your configuration. So variables are very useful in Terraform, and they allow you to easily modify and adjust the configuration that you have. And also they allow us to deploy multiple environments of the same configuration as well. Imagine that you have a single configuration. You can deploy whatever number of VMs from that configuration by just changing the variables that you include in that configuration. And basically in this course, I will use them heavily in everything that I do. And so you should do as well, because again, they are one of the main components to make your configuration portable and reusable. Now, the way that I will use them is all the non-essential information, anything that is not static, anything that will be required to be put or to change, basically, will be put in a variable so that you can change that whenever you want without rewriting the whole configuration or without scavenging the many configuration files that you want to search for a specific value. So yeah, you can do it in one place in variables while that variable is referenced by your Terraform configuration. Now there are three main types of variables in Terraform. First, we have the strange variables that we use them to store words and characters and stuff like that. Then we have the number variables. Obviously, they are used to store integers. And then we have the Boolean variables that are either set to true or false. Now, later on in the next video, you will see how we can expand on these types with complex variables, at least the way that I like to call them. These are like structured variables, structured in form of a list or object with the child items are set again to whatever structure with whatever one of these three types. Now, in order to define variables, whatever these variables are, basic or primitive, as I've seen them mentioned somewhere, or complex variables, you will need to do that in a variables.tf file. This variables.tf file will contain all of the variables that you will be using in your configuration in the form of block definition. So everything in Terraform is done in form of blocks, right? As you can see here in this VPC network resource. Then within these blocks, you will define the variable name, the variable type. If you want to include a default value for that variable, and then also you can include a description for that variable as well. So in order to show you what I'm talking about here, let me actually do some changes to my provider file. So you can see here that I'm having 4 values. I have the project name, I have the credentials, and also I have the region and zone. I don't really want to come into the variables.tf and do these changes. What I want to do is I want to change them from a known location. So when I take this whole configuration to some other environment, or maybe when I just want to give it to some friend or somebody who wants to use it, or maybe for your case as well as a takeaway of this course, you will get your own configuration. So this is why I will create the variables.tf file here. And then inside this variables.tf file, I will start defining my variable. So again, I want to replace these values with the variables that I want to define here. And then I want to set their values in here. I don't want to come to providers.tf and set any value there. Now, in order to define a variable, first of all, we have to actually define the block type, which is variable, again, because we're defining that variable, right? And then we need to put a name for it. So in my case, I have 4 values to start with. The first one is the project ID. So I'll just type it as a project ID, and let me actually put it between quotes. So this is my variable name. And then I have to actually start my block by typing the parentheses or whatever they're called. And now I need to fill in the attributes for this variable. So first of all, this is a string variable. So I will do type equals, then the type of this variable. And then just to document my stuff, which is also considered a best practice, I can add a value or an attribute called description. And in this description, I can type whatever description, for example, the project ID that I will be working with, right? You know, just something for you to understand what is the meaning of this value or what is the need for this value. And then this is something that's very useful here. You can define a default value for this variable so that you don't have to type the value every time you run the configuration. If you just save like this, and if you start using this variable, every time you run the configuration, it will ask you to insert a project ID. But if I just type a default value here, it will revert back to this default value and use whatever found in this default value. So let me go back to the provider file and copy this value, because again, it's just something I want to start with. And going back to variables and default equals, this is the default value for this variable. This is my first variable. Now the second one is the credentials, right? It's credentials. And this one, I will actually name it credentials_file, just to make sure I don't mistake it with anything else that I want to name credentials later on. So again, variable, then credential file, then you've seen it's already did the start and end of the block, which is good. Again, type string, and then the description. Again, just to document what is this variable for. Okay. Now, when I read this, I know this variable will be responsible to locating or identifying the credentials file that will be used in provider.tf. Again, I will just copy this value for now. And I will go back and type default equals, let me just do the, and then this is the value that I'm looking to have. Next, I have the region and the zone. Again, I will do the same process here. And that's it. This is the structure for the first part of what I want to show you about the variables. Now, in order to actually use these values in provider.tf, I need to do some changes. So first of all, I need to refer to this by the name. If you remember the video where I showed you how to refer to resources, that's the exact same concept. However, now we're talking about variables. So we need to start by var and then dot and then the variable name. So let me copy this one. And let me go back to provider.tf. First of all, let me save it because I didn't save it. Okay, now it's saved. Now let me go back to provider.tf. Project, I want to remove this whole value and then type var. You see, because I'm using VS Code, it does give me this autocomplete, which is awesome. This is why I would suggest you use it as well. It will save a lot of time and human error as well, because you don't have to manually type it. It will just give you the autocomplete. Then we have the credentials. And again, I will just remove the value inside the function. I hope this will be correct at the end. So I will type var dot. Then we have the project ID. Sorry, it's credentials file. Yeah. So this is the, so it's not this one. This is the credentials file. And then the region, again, we'll remove this whole value and type var.gcp region. And we'll remove this one for the zone and type var.gcp zone. That's it. Now, if I want to validate, I can just type terraform validate. This will validate the configuration, and it seems everything is good. So now, actually, before I run it, let me do some more modifications. Now, if I go back to my sample VM configuration here, you see I have a lot of stuff that I can put in variables, right? There are a lot of stuff that can be changed and made dynamic. So, for example, the name of the machine type, the zone of this VM. Also, I can do the image name or the value of the image, the startup script. I can also do it so that I can change it from the variables. So let me do this actually. Let me do the VM name, machine type, zone, although this zone is different from what I have in the provider. So I will change what's in the provider to match this. Let's do it now. So variables, and we have the zone. This is the zone. Just do the zone and then take only the region part and put it in the region. So this is the values for the provider. The region and zone are fixed. Now let's do the VM name, machine type, and let's do the image, zone obviously, startup script, and the VPC range, the IP range in the subnet. So let's do them one by one. Okay, so I have created these variables starting with the VM name, VM type, VM image, VM startup script, subnet IP range. You notice that I did not create anything for the zone because I can't just use this one. Again, why not? Why should I duplicate stuff? And there is something that I want to show you as well. I've been creating all string variables, but then I want to create something with bool value, for example, and number. So I will convert these values to variables as well. So I will convert this to a variable and I will create another one here. Okay, so I have created these additional two variables. The auto create subnets as a bool, and I set the default to false and the MTU, and then I set the value to the one that's currently there. So yeah, now I just need to replace the actual values with these variables. Again, similar to what I have done. Then you move this to var.vnm. I can go for these quickly. var.machine type. Once I find this VM type, then the zone I'll use the existing one, var.gcp zone, and then the image subscript, and then going into the VPC. This one will be replaced by VPC or create subnets, and this will be replaced by the MTU value, which is the last one. Now just replacing some of the variables, so var.ip, subnet range. And the region, again, I can just replace it. Why not? I can just replace it by var.gcp region, right? Okay. So you see now, most of these stuff, most of the dynamic stuff are converted into variables. I don't need to come here every time and change this. Maybe I will mess up something. I will remove one dot or I will add one dot, creating an error in the configuration. All this is not going to happen anymore because all my work will be done through the variables.tf file here. So let me save this. And now let me actually run this and show you what's going to happen. Let me quickly do Terraform validate as well, just to make sure everything is fine. Let me do Terraform plan. And let's see what's going to happen. Okay, so there was one typo in the configuration file here. The N was missing, so I fixed that. And then let's do Terraform plan and see what's going to happen. So now it's going to show us the plan, right? But then when I run this, when I do Terraform apply, I will type yes, because it wants me to confirm the plan. And now, as you see, it's creating that because I set a default value for this one, for these variables here. So yeah, this is now completed and the resources are created now in GCP. You can see them in this view. This is actually, yeah, this is my VM and it's named based on the variable. It's created in the zone, also set in the variable, and everything is made dynamic for us. We don't really need to change these configurations anymore. All of our work will be done in this variables file. Now you see, when we are modifying the value of these variables, we are defining that in the same place where we defined the whole variable itself. And there is a problem if we, for example, remove this quote, or if we change something by mistake, we will just break the whole variable. We will use a different file that is called terraform.tfvars, so that we can manage the values for all of these variables inside that file. So that's all for this video. Until the next video, take care and have a great time.